Welcome, everybody, to a new episode number 12 of Mayhem and Masterplans. And by my side are, in my opinion, the greatest co-host in podcast history, Simon Andreas. Welcome to the show.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you very much.
Nice to meet you again after such a long time.
It is true. It is true. But it's kind of like the thing where, a doctor tells you not to smoke and then he goes out and have a cigarette. So we tell our customers, be consistent, work on it. And then, we do the same terrible mistakes as everybody else. But, that's life. That's life.
At least we know what we're talking about and why this is the wrong way to go about it.
Exactly. But, sometimes business gets in the way. But, I'm very happy that we're back because this is definitely something that has potential to become something more than just us three talking, because I think this was started with the intention of bringing out our personality. This was started with what do we want to talk about that interests us on a day-to-day basis. And I think still today we talk about all those different formats. We talk about all that is possible within the world of podcasting. I think this is still one of the keys to success, to talk about what you really enjoy and then find your audience. It's at least from a creative side. It's not like what you do on a business side when you have goals and budgets and all that kind of stuff. But if you want to be a successful podcaster, even in 2025, talk about something that you enjoy talking about, and then your audience will find you at some point.
I think that is true for all kinds of creative endeavors. I have, for example, I have a couple of friends in music and frankly, I have an ongoing conversation with one of those friends who is very, very adamant about, focusing on what he wants to put out, his art, what he considers good. And then, he said, the audience for that, they will find me. Sure, I might have to promote it somewhere. I might have to do this or that so that they can take notice of it. But he's super clear about not wanting to budge, not following any trends, unless those trends happen to speak to him and he considers them as part of his art. And so, more power to him. Yeah, he is. Mm-hmm. He's a composer, guitarist, and yeah.
And while we're on this topic, I wanted to know, Simon, did you bring a topic for today?
No, I have ideas.
You gotta be faster.
Yeah, I have ideas, but nothing I really want to push forward. So if you have an idea, what you think is interesting.
Well, since we're on the topic of creative work and you talking about musicians, I think it was the last weeks were pretty interesting in the world of music, I would say, right? There is, dating back to, the whole Kendrick Super Bowl thing that was iconic. It's a while back, but that's kind of was a very iconic moment that people probably going to talk about for a long time, to a certain extent. Then there was Oasis reunion that just happened, where I have a bone.
Haven't seen anything on social media about the concert.
You're in the wrong bubble. And you said a few years back it's almost like the German Schlager.
Yeah.
And I think that's how they kicked you off, because I have a bone to pick with you. It's so 100% not true. And then there's also the farewell concert from Black Sabbath and Ozzy, which was, I think it's a very interesting and emotional thing.
She's still alive.
Well,
yes, she's still alive.
Well, you should stop listening to those made-up Spotify playlist and kids music and start listening to real music again, because this is something where I think with that attitude, the music industry is dying off. Or musicians. Let's not say the music industry, because I don't care about them, but the music, the artists are kind of dying with people getting into generic playlists, because let's talk about Ozzy. So Simon, yes, he's still alive, but he has Parkinson's. The doctor's telling me he has maybe 1 year to live. He just played his final concert in Birmingham, so back home where he's from. And after that, he traveled to Switzerland because he's planning to do assisted suicide.
Oh, really?
Yes. So it was his farewell concert. It was kind of like his funeral. So he's in Switzerland now. So, and that, with that, it brought me to like, okay, he's just like flying there and just gonna, off him, but it's a process. So they're gonna check you in. It's kind of like, it's a longer process. So they're doing all the physical, but yeah, you will see or hear, I guess, in the next weeks and month, about like his demise, right? That's kind of like, and it's a very
Possible.
interesting, and
Very
it's
likely. Yes.
very likely, and it's a very, I think that is a very rock and roll thing to do, right? Is it like
Yes.
very, like when you think about what rock and rollers are, and I love, and that also brings me to Oasis, because Liam Gallagher said, like, I'm not a rock star, I'm a rock and roll star. It's a very like it's very different. Rock stars are the like flashy tight leather pants, and rock and roll stars are, it's more about the attitude. And I think it's a very interesting point to go into like this idea of like, being really true to yourself, and doing the things the way you want them to do, the way I guess Oasis has been, and that attitude that they still have, and then that Aussie thing as well. So
I mean, okay, so Oasis and the Gallaghers have always rubbed me the wrong way. I've always found their music very quickly overplayed and then boring, and I found it overhyped, and I just
I'm so sorry, but
and the return of the overhype, I also can't stand. I'm happy for everybody who's a fan, and I'm happy that these guys,
but it's like
because they need to make money. And
they don't need to make money. That's the point. They didn't need to make money.
Let me finish, sir. I'm happy that they can still go out on stage, find their audience, and have fun with it, right? Everybody's happy who's there. The people who are coming to visit, who are coming to watch the shows, the guys who are putting on the shows, everybody is having fun. More power to them. That's fantastic. I'm not in that bubble, Simon, just like you. And I'm not missing it on my social media either, because personally, to me, it just never clicked.
Yeah,
but that's totally fine, right? That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying your choice is bad just because you choose to like them. But
what I don't like, it's interesting about that band, because it's so like, to me, I've never, and I don't want to get into the topic, because there was a discussion about like somebody on social media, like Bill Burr was talking about this one lady saying like, the Beatles are so overhyped. I've never been the biggest fan of the Beatles. I like their songs. I understand what they've been for music, and how they kind of like define modern pop and rock music, and all the influence that they have. But I've never been a huge fan of them, of theirs. And the same, like Bob Dylan, is that just like, he doesn't speak to me, where everybody's like, oh my God, Dylan. But then Oasis, like, I think, and I know I'm now putting stuff in your mouth, that it's kind of like, you don't want to like them because of their attitude, because who they are, and because you can't tell me
I don't have an issue with attitude.
Back in anger.
I really don't have an issue with attitude. I'm all for attitude.
But you can't tell me that Wonderwall or Don't Look Back in Anger, like, they're so classy, and then people want to down talk them. They're not as big because they never made it in the US.
Just like ABBA is catchy, and just like Rick Astley is catchy.
But that doesn't mean that you like the whole band, right?
Right?
Or the whole.
These are fantastically crafted pop songs. No doubt about it. And then, I don't know, to have an attitude and to stylize yourself to be a rock and roll star, fine. Great marketing. If he feels that way, fantastic. If his fans dig that, fantastic. Just not for me. But on that topic, to go back to Ozzy and Black Sabbath has also never clicked with me. It just doesn't. I find it too soft. I find it too easy. The reality show I found funny for a while. At some point, really cringy. But Black Sabbath, I totally know what they have done for the music that I do like, right? Lamb of God would not exist and couldn't have played at Ozzy's last show
I think a ton of
the Black Sabbath
music that
show.
you listen to would
If
not
not,
exist because
no,
of them,
absolutely,
right? Because like most of
absolutely.
the music, probably like everything that's like in heavy metal now, probably wouldn't
Yeah,
exist.
it's.
But
I mean that's the whole point, right? They basically invented heavy metal,
Mhm.
or like
and
the
are the original.
predecessor to it, right? And the interesting part is like I think from a musical perspective, and that's kind of how all these bands get me at some point. It's like the way funk music or ABBA or even, you know, very classic pop music can get me. I think about like Dio, Taro Woman. I don't know if you know that song. Like that was written in, I don't know, 1976, I think, or
I don't
68.
know.
I'm not 100% sure. But that song, like having this like crazy organ intro and then having this hard riffs and this like like the epitome of like what heavy metal like the riffs are about. And then Black Sabbath, if you listen to like War Pigs, which is an in like nowadays it seems like, oh, that's kind of like too lame, and but put it in the context of the time that they were making this music, it's like that must have been mind-blowing to everybody and be like,
Yes,
how do you come up with that stuff? And that's
exactly
kind of
right.
like that's what I appreciate about those artists. And also I think Oasis, of course, nowadays it's like nostalgia, and I think they're doing it in a great way. The nostalgia thing, like they're not overhyping it in the way of like we're styling it to something bigger, or we're turning this into like we're doing like crazy eccentric shows, and like they just like they're doing the shows that they were doing back in the days, but they're older now, and everybody's happy that they're back and all that kind of stuff. So they like I like those kind of stories, and there's a few of them, I guess. But I think what they stood for, like those two boys that come from a very rough area in the UK, and then they sing these kind of songs, and they were kind of like hymns for like a whole generation.
They
That like
they cashed in on the bad boy image. Come on, it's a
In pop
marketing ploy.
music.
Yes, of course. It's pop music with a bad boy image and slightly distorted guitars. Come on. I'm not
Yes.
saying it's not great for those who love it, right? But
but like what like then like I think it's, yeah, like you want to push it into pop, but I don't think it's that.
okay.
Um
Britpop.
Well,
Yeah.
if you want to call it Britpop, yeah, sure. Or what? Yeah, or like the predecessor to indie music, or whatever you want to. I don't know, but I
Fair
think
enough.
like again the context of the time that they were in, and then doing those kind of songs as like think about it, like you're trying to be like a tough teenager in northern England, and then you're playing this kind of music. It's kind of like a bit off to to what you expect, and then building those songs that everybody can sing along. Of course, that's kind of like it becomes, of course, pop music to a sense, like the
True.
same way
True.
I guess like the Foo Fighters are pop music, where it becomes something that you can
Yeah.
just sing along to.
Mhm.
That becomes so big, but yeah, so and then and to me that creativity, like that
Mhm.
really like like, and then thinking about this kind of stuff, that creativity is something that I would
Did,
love to see in other areas
is
more.
Oasis going on tour? Are they playing
Yeah.
a couple of different shows? Or okay, are you going to go see them?
I try to get tickets. I
Mhm.
almost last week bought a ticket for Manchester, but it was
Okay.
with flights and everything was $1,000, and I'm like, I'm not gonna do that. So
Okay.
they're playing England now. Like I think they're playing 12 shows in 4 cities or something like that. They
Mhm.
played Cardiff, they play in Edinburgh, they play Manchester, they play in London, then they're doing the US, then they're doing
Oh,
Australia,
really?
and I think they're gonna play a European set at some point where they're gonna come to Berlin or something. They play in South America as well. They're cheap. Tickets are
They're
cheap
basically
in South
following
America.
the Linkin Park tour. Huh?
Yeah, I guess. Again, also Linkin Park is never like again. That's a band that never clicked. I've never clicked with
Really?
that band.
They totally fucking click for me. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
Really, Linkin Park.
Yes,
No,
absolutely.
Just
it-
the first two songs, I would say.
I mean, right, of course, not every single song, but
Yeah, but-
overall, yeah, absolutely.
No,
But Linkin Park has an incredible, huge, and worldwide fan base, right?
yeah.
And that's really, that's also what I find very
But
surprising.
their comeback was this year as well, right?
Yeah, technically, I think it was last year, but yeah.
With one show. But I think they did a very interesting move of how can you progress into a new kind of like still be creative and move and not trying to replicate something, because, you know, their lead singer died. They went off for quite a bit and they said, okay, we're coming back. And they got a female, like a lead singer, a female lead singer. And like I listened to their first song on the radio, and it's just 100% radio music to me.
Oh, yeah.
But
Yes,
I
it
think
is.
they did such a great job of keeping something that existed and the core of the band and what fans love. But I think they evolved to 2025, and I was so like I'm so impressed by the way they did it, and that's
yeah.
And do you think it's organic, or is this something that is very thought out?
I think it's a product of the music labels, right? So,
you know, in all honesty, I mean, ultimately, we'll never fully know, right? We'll have to trust the various interviews that they give and the various stories that they push.
I think they're too big to be pushed by a label anymore, right?
The point being, I think I do trust these guys that for a long time they were really under the heavy influence of the loss of their vocalist and his suicide. And then at some point as an artist, you kind of go back to creating a little bit of art and practicing your craft, whatever that might be. And in this case, they went back into the studio. They kind of tried a few things, worked on a few things, worked with friends as you would. And their new vocalist is one of those people who at some point, was kind of in their orbit and joined them. And they played in the studio a few things, and they frankly tried a few things. And then at some point they realized that there's something there. And, we can perhaps develop that into a certain direction. And then it's also a question of not only, in this case, is she able to vocally hit that range to deliver the old songs, but also deliver the emotion of the old songs? And frankly, also, is she going to withstand the questioning audience once you present this person and you're putting them up on stage? Even if you kind of stand shoulder to shoulder with the rest of the band, they're still going to stare at the new guy or the new gal, and there's going to be a huge amount of pressure. And so is all of that something that they can pull off? And I think they just at some point in the studio felt that this was the right mix, and this was actually a path forward. That I don't think they went looking. I don't think they had the intention to resurrect this and to really go out and find the new vocalist for Linkin Park. I think it really did organically evolve out of jam sessions.
When was the release of the first album? Back then, was it 2002, 4, 6?
Yeah,
I think it was
somewhere around then.
Yeah,
Must
I
have
always
been around
understood them
2002 or
as
something.
an product of the music labels and as an answer of Linkin Park. Sorry, Limp Bizkit. I thought there was Limp Bizkit in my bubble, and then Limp Bizkit was quite successful. Could be that Limp Bizkit was also a kind of casted band, but
No, they weren't.
They weren't, right? And then Linkin Park appeared in my bubble, and I thought, okay, that's the answer of the mainstream to
so
Limp
Hybrid Theory was released in 2000.
2000.
That was the first
the big one that
Yeah, and then Meteora was the second
What
one.
was the first single? The name of the first single?
Numb or something? Was it
Numb,
that?
yeah.
Was it that one?
I think so.
I kind of like the crossover that they did with Jay-Z, but that was a fun one. But
Yeah.
interestingly enough, like if you think about that, like Limp Bizkit, another interesting story, that kind of made that evolution, and I think so they were big, right? And then all of new metal went away, so it was kind of like a thing of like the '90s and early 2000s, and then it was gone. And there's another band that kind of like fell victim to that, was a German band that was hugely successful globally, H Blocks. So we're producing the podcast with Henning, right?
Yes.
And then I think they were in a long kind of like search for everybody going their own way and trying to figure out what to do when, having been at that level of fame. And I don't know. I guess to a certain extent, chasing it. I guess I don't know. So I'm just speaking. This is just me making assumptions. But
Sure.
like where you're trying to chase something that had like that was successful, because I think it starts with creativity, right? Creativity then gets seen and gets recognized, and then you become very successful. Because most of those people that you see in success, again, an overnight success is a 10-year story. So most of those people have been in bands or playing, the coming out album that is big. They probably produced 2 or 3 EPs before that, then where the huge fans say like, "Oh, I much prefer that one." And it was Simon with you. It was the Blink 182 album that came before the what was it, Enema of the State. Whereas like, yeah, that's like Dude Ranch was like, that wasn't great, but the hardcore fans said like, no, this is the much better album. It's I don't know. I mean, and then I think you get big, and then you become hugely successful, and then you get acquainted to that fame and to that success, and then pressure comes in, and then you feel like, oh, how can I recreate this? And I think that's when people struggle, and that's when you have this down phase. You see a lot of bands then have like, even with AC/DC and the Rolling Stones and all those big bands, they have a ton of like garbage right in the middle, where kind of like the career dips. They kind of like disappear for a while. They become less relevant, and then at a certain point where they, I guess, make or where they just give up and trying to chase that dream and just say like, hey, this is who we are, this is what we do. Like Limp Bizkit is having a comeback right now, like they're filling up stadiums. AC/DC is now just like at this legendary stadium. ZZ Top, like they produced a bunch of garbage in between, but they made it to that level where they kind of went through that pitfall.
Look, it's very simple. If you compare that to startups, right? The world that a lot of our listeners are more familiar with, or the business world in general. So it's a question of focus. So if, for example, you think of a startup and a young band as two very similar constructs, right? There's somebody who had an idea, which probably took a few years to come to the state of building a prototype or recording a demo, and then the prototype was kind of getting a little bit more polished and being given to a couple of first testers, and then at some point it turned into a product, and you formed a company around it. And then on the music side, it is okay, you record a better version of it, or you master it better, and you put it out as a record, and you find some fans, you play a few shows, on a small scale, and so suddenly you have maybe a little bit of success with a thing that you've been working on for a long time, or you've been thinking about for a long time. And you still have a bunch of feature ideas on the product side, or song ideas on the music side, kind of in your notebooks and in your head, and you can kind of still fill that for a while. And then, we come to the hard facts about, okay, building a company. You can't just focus on the product anymore. Now you got to deal with investors and taxes and lawyers and marketing and customer support, right? The customers that started coming, they also want attention. and you got to handle all of that. And it's fun and it's new and you're learning something and you're really enjoying that. But right now you're spending all your time on these things and you're not actually working on the product or putting in new feature ideas. And on the music side, it's the same thing. You're starting to do merch. You're dealing with tours. You're, wanting to
Press.
record another album, press inquiries. There's more fans, which means there's more responses and more likes, and you got to interact with them. And at some point, you're like, I got to go home and actually just chill on the couch. I can't write another song. I don't have it in me right now. And so these are the phases where when
and maybe
everything
maybe
gets
also the moment, like, or the reasons you were writing those great songs, that situation has long passed because
absolutely correct,
Yeah.
right?
maybe if you start
Absolutely
off
correct.
as a punk rock band and you're
Mhm.
talking about like, I used to love Rage Against the Machine and I totally
Mhm.
got where they were going, but nowadays I'm like, it kind of like, I don't believe you anymore to that extent, right? Where it just feels like you're being
Right, but
like,
very
you
simply said,
haven't
this
changed in a way of like you're not being like, you could have been an activist, but you need to change in a way. Like Tom Morello is sort of trying,
yeah.
managing it, but it doesn't feel right anymore. Where it's like, because you're a multi-millionaire
What
and
what
you're
what was
trying
the
to
name of the lead singer again?
Zach de la Roja.
Vec de la Roja.
But
He was the
so
activist,
my
right?
my
Singing
point
back.
ultimately being that the moment when things get professionalized more, right? Or get moved from a more organic playing field into a more rigid playing field. That is the time when you just don't have time and effort to focus on the thing that made you great in the first place.
And
And only
and
a
I
few
think that is
years
the
later,
creative
once you are
part,
in a
right? Because I
yeah,
think
exactly.
you're moving away from the playing field and you're moving
Mhm.
into processes.
Exactly.
So it's
Exactly. You're
not the
moving
playing field anymore.
fantastic
It's not like,
Yeah.
fantastic
hey,
point. You're moving from creativity to process optimization, right?
yeah,
You you have a COO coming in. It's not about
boo,
mayhem and master plans anymore. It's about master plans.
and plans, or
Yeah.
master the plans.
Well, yes. Anyway, I think
Yeah, but I
Yeah.
think that's so that would bring me back to the point of like, there's a few bands out there I think that manage in a great way of keeping creativity and keeping freshness. I think one person that managed to be very successful, but then always stay true to kind of like the core of what he does is Dr. Dre. I think that he's like put out 2 albums in his life or 3, and it's just like, and then I go into hiding, do something else. I think it's a great example of
well, I
doing it.
built a brand that sells AirPods
Headphones, yeah,
and
yeah,
sells
but
them to Apple,
Apple
right?
for like billions, but
Yeah.
it was kind of like on his own terms, right? Like
Mhm. Yeah.
doing, I think there's like the Queens of the Stone Age to me is a band that, from like, think about the first albums and listen to what they sound now, what they sound like now. It's very different, and the way they kind of like moved and progressed, but stayed under the radar, but still are kind of like hugely famous globally. It's
Mhm.
another great example of staying creative, doing their own thing, doing things the way they want them to do. I think Dave Chappelle is another great example where he just like, I'm not playing by the rules. I'm just keeping it in house. And if you say on a musician, I think the Wu-Tang Clan is another example of being underground but still being mainstream that everybody knows. I think they managed to kind of like balance that off. And then the RZA is doing great stuff. He was doing something with like the singer from Interpol, and very interesting projects. And so, how do you, in a world like, again, talking, bringing it back to business, how do you keep creativity alive? And because as we established, it's the key that brought you to the success that you have now. How do you keep that going to
That's a really good question. I think it's something that I've been talking about with a couple of clients recently, in one shape or another. in my opinion, it comes down to you have to make room for creativity. You have to, carve out time for it, and you just have to maintain focus. And by maintaining focus, I mean things like, so you could spend 3 weeks just test driving 20 different CRMs, but the reality is you need one, and it needs to be good enough for the beginning. You don't need to spend 3 weeks or 3 months, frankly, on trying to figure out and not making a decision on what system to use. So if you know that you're moving up from the level of spreadsheet to a CRM system, find one that feels right for you, or that you get good word of mouth from other co-founders or other people in your orbit from, and just pull the trigger and move ahead with it. And the same thing is true for all other kinds of processes or systems or tools. You're not really in the process of optimizing all of these things right now and right then. What you need is you need to move from doing everything manually to doing everything faster manually, half automated, perhaps fully automated, a few things, so that you can delegate things better and that you can grow, perhaps without hiring more people in that stage. And then make sure that you have time to be creative. And whatever that means for you, it could mean that you take walks with a dog in the morning and think. It could mean that you sketch in your sketchbook and think. It could mean that you code, right? Whatever creativity brought you there, just make time for it and see it as a relevant part of your business.
Simon, you're in tech, you're in coding, you're in developing. So in my head, it's often the opposite of creativity, which is wrong. But because you need to find creative solutions and all that, and kind of like imagine from the ground up ideas and bring them to life. So, but how do you stay creative?
Yeah, I think as Andreas said, finding time for it, to rest, right? And to offload all the mental load, I would say. I think that helps me to stay creative, fresh, and clean in the head. And
But that one thing is staying clean in your head and kind of like keeping space, but is that something that really gets you, like, is there something that gets you into the creative thinking process?
yeah, definitely having a fresh mind, for example, in the morning. So what it is a classical meme, I would say, that you are struggling to fix a bug or to solve a coding problem late at night, 4 hours, and then you have a sleep. You wake up in the morning, you look at the coding problem, and you have it figured out in 10 minutes. So that happens really often. So so it is already an meme, yeah. And that's in coding. It's really like being fresh, being fit. That is really what
So
helps.
what do you specifically do then? Do you have anything like what do you specifically do? Like, is there anything like going on
Take
a
time
run or
off,
something?
right? Or going to bed early.
Drink coconut water.
Drink coconut water, yeah. Uh, Eating healthy, doing sports, something like that, right? So,
Okay.
um,
What about
yeah.
you, Andreas?
My creativity, so it comes down to thinking, and I try to cut out distractions, but also I do some of my best thinking on long road trips, driving down empty highways in the southwest of the US or stuff like that, where for hours you just basically see desert. Those things are fantastic to think things through. Can't always hop in a plane and go there. So, sometimes it's just taking a walk. Sometimes it's just sitting in a cafe and looking at people. Depending on what it is I'm trying to figure out. It's what I clearly try to do is I try to change my my surroundings. So if I'm in my office or in the place where I usually am for a longer period of time, then I try to switch it up. That helps me.
Mm-hmm.
What helps you?
I realize there's two things in particular that kind of like where I get like out of that situation and my head is full with like, oh, there's a ton of stuff that I need to think about. And one thing is conversations with people. So I take a lot of energy and out of discussion and challenging myself with others in that kind of like mental battle, to so to say, like really like that is one thing. And the other thing is that I realize is music. So last week I just the more like it was super nice outside, so I have this nice new spot that I can sit outside and just wind down like in the morning, have a coffee, and instead of listening to podcasts, which kind of like gives me insights and I learn something, it doesn't give me the creative freedom because I learned something and it's very like it's nice. But then I haven't listened to music in a long time, so I went back and said like, okay, there's this album, Rumors by Fleetwood Mac, that somebody told me about so many times. The other guy in the music podcast, Till, has been telling me about this album for so long, and I've never listened to it. So I went and listened to that full album, and I've never listened to it before, and I wasn't really familiar with Fleetwood Mac that well. Like I knew a few songs, but that album is insane. That is such an exciting, great album. It has so many styles, and that that really got me so uplifted and like, wow, okay, so this is kind of like a kickoff into like, let's think about all those things that we want to do in like the new studio, the Hypecast AI thing, all those things kind of like that we did last week on like the creative side of it and thinking about the process and everything that kind of sparked from that momentum out of listening to Rumors, which I realized like music really gives me that uh, that spirit and
I will say that music, I find the same thing. Music helps me, get into a different mindset. And music and playing music or practicing music also helps me in different ways. So, I'm not the particularly most creative guitar player. I do that as a hobby. But just knowing that, you can get the same note in, I don't know, 5 or 7 different spots on the fretboard, and they will all sound slightly differently, even though it is the same note. And, that you can probably then have another 5 or 10 different options of bending up or down to get to those notes. It just gives you this view of options and optionality and creative ways of essentially doing the same thing that you can apply when you need to or when you want to. And thinking about things like that and thinking about different angles of attack to a problem, I think is always helpful.
awesome. I would love to visit revisit this topic like every now and then because this topic of creativity really I like it very much, and it's something I think that we can always like keep the creative juices flowing. I think will always help us in that industry. So I would love to come back to this topic at some other point. We're not gonna answer all the questions, but it was very insightful. I love this conversation. And as we always talk a little bit about music, what is the last song that you guys listened to?
I will leave you. Oh no, Simon, you start. Kid
I
song?
have a new playlist. I think it was also from Instagram, an ad in Instagram from a Spotify user, John the Big Music Guy, and he created a playlist. Who up yachting they rocken, rocken, don't know. And
Yacht rock.
huh?
Is it
Rock and
yacht
roll.
rock?
Yeah, it's yard rock, and the song is I want to know what love is from the Foreigners. Or
I wanna
Foreigner.
know
No,
what
they
love
are the Foreigners and they are the
is.
Foreigner, right? From Foreigner, not the Foreigners.
Foreigner?
Foreigner?
Sorry, Foreigner. Yeah.
Like you mean the song like I want to know what love is?
Yeah, that song.
Yes.
That song, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. My last song that I listened to is "Insane in the Brain" by Cypress Hill.
That is good. That is good. I'm actually going to leave you with a song that I listened to briefly while we were recording this, from that friend who I mentioned at the very beginning. So the song is called Ascension, and the band is called Serapis Project.
Yeah, they like. I thought you were talking about them. Like they decided. I'm like we're doing it our way. So like for that like
Absolutely.
that like
Absolutely.
I saw them live and I was blown away by like the decision that they made on going down that path. But you know, yeah.
But it worked really well.
Yeah.
Every damn show. In
Yeah.
the end, the people who were watching it just ended up moving ever closer and being ever more captivated. Yes,
I think
it
that
works.
should be one of our goals. I think we're all music fans. I think it should be my like it's my goal that I get us all to one concert that we like. Either we all not gonna like we all not want to go and then enjoy it anyway, or you know doing the rounds and everybody picks a concert, something like that, or Rock am Ring or something like that. I don't know where everybody.
Yeah, we can do that. We can do that. Company offsite at Rock am Ring. I love it.
Well, they need
I saw
podcasts too.
crowds of Rock am Ring last year, and I think this year it's pretty small. These days, right? So the crowd, I think, 20 years ago, it was way more crowded than.
Or
Yeah,
maybe
I think they've
Andreas,
just gotten
years.
better at moving traffic and stuff. So
or
Yeah,
maybe
I'm not
Andreas,
sure.
or maybe Andreas is going to take us to Wacken. I've never been. I want to go. Maybe he's going to take
really,
us
you've
one day.
never been?
Of
Yeah,
course
we should
not.
do that. We should do that.
All right, everybody. That was Mayhem and Masterplans, episode number 12. We talked about music. We're going to find a title for this. We're going to get better, I promise. And we're gonna leave you with this for today. Thank you guys, and have a good day.
Thanks for listening.